Hi, my name is Bennett Vaughn, and I am a member of the class of 2020. I'm here speaking to you today because of a little text I received on the 8th of November at approximately 11:40 a.m. The text was from none other than my best buddy, Kate Stukenborg, telling me that she had just been asked to speak at chapel in January. I, as well as the rest of my classmates, knew Kate would be one of the first chapel speakers from our class, but I had no idea that it would be this soon. And I know Kate didn't see this invitation coming because the first thing she said after telling me the news was, and I quote, "But all I've done is change my major 3 times and meet Gwyneth Paltrow." Yes, this quote highlights both her humility and fantastic sense of humor, but it also just serves as the perfect representation of who Kate Stukenborg truly is. Here, amongst faculty, staff, and students, Kate is perceived as the ideal St. Mary's girl. She's a lifer, Springfest queen, and she's even taken on the role as the Virgin Mary during the holiday season. Now, don't get me wrong, I too would consider Kate to be the poster child for this school, especially considering that St. Mary's is what brought us together. But I'm lucky enough to say that I have witnessed the many other sides of her that go beyond these halls. Since graduating from St. Mary's and continuing her studies at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill as a Moorhead Kane Scholar, Kate has kept herself quite busy. As expected, she has done great work within her new community, working closely with a local children's museum and the Family Support Center. While the list of her accomplishments is extensive, I figured I would share some insight into the things that are more telling of her true character. Aside from changing her favorite color to purple, Kate had a brief ultimate frisbee stint that has since ended. She has unintentionally walked multiple half marathons during her free time, and she even got herself an invitation to and attended the wedding of a local taco truck owner. I wish I could go on and on about the intriguing and rather mysterious life that is Kate Stukenborg's, but unfortunately, I think it would be best if I went ahead and handed over the mic to the woman herself. Please help me in welcoming the one and only Kate Stukenborg.
Thank you, Bennett, for the lovely introduction. I did recently change my favorite color to purple, which is a big deal, so I'm glad it made it in there. Last time I spoke in chapel, it wasn't really chapel at all, but rather all of us crammed into Cheney Parish Hall for renovations. At the time, the youngest students had to sit on carpet samples on the floor and crane their necks to see the speaker. The entire freshman class, who are juniors now, had to sit behind the chapel speaker and watch them fidget nervously behind the podium. Also, the last time I spoke in chapel for my senior speech, I didn't know it was my last day as a student at St. Mary's. After my speech, Mr. Throckmorton came up to tell us to consider taking home some extra books for spring break in case we would have to stay home for extra time because of this whole COVID thing. We all kind of laughed and started joking about how awesome an extended spring break would be, a joke which aged really poorly. At the time, COVID felt more like an inconvenience than anything. Plenty of spring break activities stayed on the calendar, and news of this potential extended spring break brought celebration more than dread. But by the time I left for Chapel Hill, the pandemic had become a source of anxiety and sadness for the entire world. My first semester was unlike any other. I spent countless hours on Zoom every day, and I found it really difficult to connect with my classmates the way I did at St. Mary's. After 19 years in one house in Memphis, I was now in a new one, in a new town, and by the end of the semester, I was missing Memphis a lot more than I thought I would. Over the semester, I heard stories of canceled plans and really lonely first semesters of college. Stories of students being sent home to places they felt they knew too well, or like me, trying desperately to make a home in a place they didn't know at all. Through all of this, I tried to be as empathetic as possible. I tried to listen with all the time and attention I could offer, and I tried to ask questions whose answers might need listening to. I drew on my own feelings of frustration or loneliness to try and understand how others might feel. Empathy was this practice I drew on over and over again, the practice of paying attention to the feelings of others and responding with care. Soon enough, it felt really overwhelming. I'm sure many of you shared in that feeling. The feeling that disappointment was the new norm and joy was the exception. That it was all too much to carry. That being empathetic was impossibly difficult in a time when we felt like we hardly had the capacity to carry the weight of our own disappointments, much less those of others. Though my first semester was great in some ways, I still carried this overwhelming heaviness when I came home for the break. It was around late November last year that I came back to Memphis for an extremely long winter break. Because I was a freshman in college, I was still hesitant to do adult things like make haircut appointments. Actually, the only time I had my hair cut over the whole semester was by my friend in a really tiny bathroom with really big scissors that weren't really meant for hair at all. So by the time I came home, my hair was too long for my liking, and I was in need of a trim. So, like the new adult I was, I went to supercuts.com and I made myself an appointment for the next day. The next afternoon, I made my way there, I parked, and I squeezed my way through the line of last-minute Thanksgiving shoppers tracing all the way back into Honey Baked Ham right next door. As I'm walking into this shopping center, I noticed that it looks a lot different than it did the last time I was there. As I was driving there, I noticed there wasn't a line all the way out the door of Gibson's Donuts. And as I parked, I noticed there were no soccer teams eating post-game pizza at Memphis Pizza Cafe next door. No, by this time in the year, it's a much different scene. Everyone is wearing masks and fidgeting with their hands uncomfortably when the people around them get too close. I noticed that not many people are wearing glasses because everyone knows they get fogged up beneath a mask. So instead of seeing people push glasses up the bridge of their noses, I see them pinch the wire at the top of their mask and pull it upward to make sure it covers their whole face. It's sad to see everyone's faces covered, but at this point, I'm used to it. Anywhere I've been in the past few months, I've had to imagine what people's smiles might look like beneath a mask. I pull my own mask up, and I walk in for my 2:30 appointment. I'm pointed towards the waiting area, where I take a seat in the corner and look around at the Thursday afternoon crowd. Then, this one woman catches my eye immediately. She's got dark hair and an enormous brown leather bag on the ground next to her. She's just finishing up her appointment, so I get to see the magic moment where her chair swivels around until she's facing a reflection of herself with her new cut. Right as she sees it, she starts beaming. I know she's got a huge smile beneath her mask from the way her eyes squint and the way she laughs with excitement. It's not until I hear two more squeals of excitement that I notice she's with two other women, probably friends or sisters. They're showering her with compliments, telling her how much they love the new look, how it frames her face so well, makes her eyes stand out. They are as ecstatic as she is. When she gets up from the chair, I notice the way she walks with this really exaggerated motion, so her hair kind of swings back and forth, showing it off just above her shoulders. And when I catch her eye, I get to tell her how much I love it. How I didn't see the original length, but I just know the new look, the short look, suits her so well. She stops her strut, and her hair stops swinging and falls back into place above her shoulders. And she looks at me. She's got my full attention now. She looks me in the eye and starts to tell me a story. This, she says proudly, is the first time she's cut her hair since July. In July, her husband passed away due to complications with COVID. Since then, she just couldn't bring herself to make the change. But today, she got an 18-inch braid chopped. And doesn't it look great, she says, and resumes her bouncing step. I don't know exactly how to respond, so I just tell her again how amazing it looks, and that I'm glad she likes it. I'm surprised and extremely grateful that she shared this story with me, a stranger. And my attention is still on this group of women as they walk out the door. The last thing I hear is one of the other women asking, "You've got it, right?" To which my new friend responds with a nod and a pat on her bag. So there she goes, strutting out the door, a huge smile on her face, and an 18-inch braid in her purse. After she left, I got my hair cut and walked out. And when I got in the car, I realized I had not stopped smiling. There I was, still grinning over something that didn't happen to me, something that happened to a woman whose name I didn't even know. I noticed how, in a way, this was kind of similar to the empathy I tried to practice during first semester. I was given the opportunity to pay attention to someone's feelings and feel their weight for myself. This time, however, the woman I met was sharing a moment of joy with me and inviting me to feel it too, to be a part of it. I hadn't thought of empathy this way, as not only the difficult practice of joining in another person's sadness, but the privilege of joining them in their joy. I had thought of empathy only as opening myself up to the painful feelings people shared. This happens often, and it's a deeply generous act to pay so much attention to another's pain that you feel it for yourself. But empathy also happens in such a way that you end up laughing or smiling or jumping up and down at another person's good news, even if it's not your own. The poet, Mark Doty, seems to understand this version of empathy well in his poem, Visitation. Visitation is about this whale who enters a harbor by accident. And the speaker of the poem worries that the whale is lost or confused or maybe even close to death. But to the speaker's surprise, this whale isn't moving slowly or stopped in utter confusion. In fact, it practically dances around the water with, as Doty writes, what could only be read as pleasure. The poem reads, coming close, then diving, trailing on the surface, big, spreading circles until he'd breach, thrilling us with the release of pressured breath. The speaker reveals that he himself at the time is overcome with grief and sadness, which seem to surround him like the harbor surrounds this whale. So he's surprised by this animal's capacity to be joyful when surrounded by a dark and unknown place. He writes, I couldn't help but look at the way this immense figure graces the dark medium and shines so. Heaviness, which is no burden to itself. What did you think? That joy was some slight thing? Joy is no slight thing, especially now. To pay attention to it and extend ourselves towards it, and then to bring it into ourselves, that takes effort. The kind of effort it might take for a whale, thousands of pounds, to dance in the water, or the kind of effort it might take to share a moment of joy with a stranger in a hair salon, even when that joy comes from a time of a lot of sadness. But feeling the joy of others has grounded me in a year of chaos and revealed a lot of beauty to me. Of course, there's plenty of sadness to be felt, and I'm confident that all of us have the strength to share it with others, to make the choice to pay attention to it. But I'm also confident that there's joy to be found and seen and felt, if not in our own experiences, then in the lives of others. My hope when I'm disappointed or sad is that those around me would be kind enough to let me into their joy. And my comfort when others are upset is that soon enough they'll join me in laughter. In the past few years, many of the women sitting here have shown me how empathy can be a joyful act, as I've gotten to hear about the amazing things they've seen and done and experienced, and I'm grateful for their willingness to share it with me. I'm sure many of you do this for each other too, by listening to each other, or being excited about good news together, or celebrating each other's successes. Thank you for all of that, and I hope you keep doing it. And thank you for listening today.